Okay, I'm Moshe coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. And, well, we got a little bit going on today. I don't think it's anything that end times big deal, but we got stuff going on. So today's the 14th of September, and I said on Moshe, it's a Sunday, first day of the week in Israel, and it's about 7:13 in the morning. So the biggest news thing to discuss is, does it look like Russia's really going to go to war with NATO and Europe? We'll dissect that today, and then we'll get into what is Shmukinyahu doing in Israel and the war in Gaza. And it's going, like I said, the Gaza people said that Netanyahu destroyed 30 buildings the other day, or hit them with bombs or whatever. Yeah, he's destroying the real estate, just like I told you he was going to do. And people do get killed, but they're not always Hamas. A lot of times they're civilians. They do send evacuation orders out, and a lot of these people are pro-Hamas and they hate Israel and they don't abide by the evacuation orders for various reasons. I don't know, all of them. Could be Hamas doesn't let them go, and I don't know. And people get killed, and I'm sure Hamas exaggerates the amount of people that get killed. I don't have any doubt about that. But I don't think he's getting that many of the soldiers. And like I said, when the buildings that they use are destroyed, which is going to happen, then they're going to go into the tunnels. The tunnels have probably already been prepped weeks and weeks ago. And they've got enough food and water in there for probably 6 months or more. So that's the next phase of it, and that keeps Netanyahu out of jail because he's not going to just take hoses with seawater and fill the tunnels up, and that's the end of that, because it'll destroy the ecosystem. Oh, let me get this straight. The bunker buster bombs that you're dropping with all the concrete and the debris, strewn about in the earth, that's not going to hurt the ecosystem. Oh, I'm a jerk. I didn't know. I thought all those chemicals from the explosion and everything would hurt the ecosystem. Oh, I guess I'm pretty stupid. Yeah. He doesn't want to do it that way because it'll bring it to an end. More and more people are getting more and more aware of this, but they don't know what to do about it. Okay? They don't know what to do about it. It's punishment. Netanyahu is a punishment on Israel. You got to understand that. For their evil ways. They elected this jerk. And they're suffering. And a lot of them just don't care. They want the corruption he brings. That's how they don't want to go to school and get a 5-year degree in engineering and go do it the hard way. They'd rather pay off and get the protexia and you get the jobs that way. Why go to school? We're Satan bots. We don't have to go to school. We're the chosen ones. We're the kings of the earth. You know, there's a scripture that walk around showing themselves off as the sons of God. That's what they do. We found 2 more very ultra-rich communities in America we're going to go to work on today. I don't think they're transformer havens like Monaco, but we'll go to work on them. They're full of Satan bots, rest assured, chock full. And we'll talk about Russia lining up missile launchers on the roads near Poland, pointing them at Poland, and how their drones have been violating Poland and violating Romania, and Poland mobilized 40,000 soldiers by the border with Belarus, and this, and closed the border with Belarus, and then Russia demands that Poland opens the border with Belarus, and blah, 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 blah. We'll go through it all. And what's Iran up to, and Israel, and all that. In the meantime, let me go into the live stream and make sure everything is copacetic. Looks good. Israel and all that. In the meantime, looks good. Okay. I'm going to put a post up in the live stream, which won't take long. But if I talk too much, I'll make typos. Okay. That didn't go right. There we go. Okay, we got some people coming in. Gates new city in Tonopah, Arizona. Bill Gates built the city there or something? I didn't know. I guess he's got enough money to build the city on. Okay, people are going out of the live stream now. That's fine. Okay, I'm going to do some praise, being a Bible-believing site. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Let's see how that affected the population. Stayed the same. Pretty interesting. Let's see what. Yes, he will. Thousands of acres and no cars. Huh. If prophetic time would allow, that would be interesting, but I seriously doubt it. Remember, it's like the days of Noah. They're going to keep building and marrying and giving in marriage, and just like everything's never going to end. But it does. Noah knew it, and we knew it. Okay. So Russia penetrated Poland with perhaps 100 drones on a big drone strike against Ukraine the other day, and Poland was shooting them down and getting all freaked out with sirens and everything else, and it was wrong of Russia, for sure, no doubt about it. Poland activated Article 4 of NATO, not Article 5. Article 4 in baby talk is like the country says, I'm scared, I think there's impending doom and gloom on the way quickly, and I need to call a meeting, and that's what they did. They could have decided they want to make war against Russia based on the drone. The drone did cause a small amount of damage, but they didn't do that. They're giving Poland some aircraft and some help, and NATO did some sort of troop movement more easterly, and now Putin or Russia violated the Romanian airspace with drones also. So what is Putin doing? Let's get real. Is Putin trying to attack and start World War III? No. Listen. Anybody that went to a military war college can tell you that the element of surprise is worth a fortune in war. Okay? The Japanese did the element of surprise with Pearl Harbor, and they got tremendous mileage in the Pacific out of that for. It took us about 2 years, America about 2 years to start getting over on Japan. In the beginning, it was a heavy naval war, and they were landing on islands and having a lot of trouble keeping the islands and having to withdraw. It was not easy for the Allies in the Pacific in the beginning, not at all. Japan was winning. They had a lot of capital ships. A capital ship is a very large ship that costs a lot of bucks. It could be a battleship is a capital ship, okay? An aircraft carrier is a capital ship. A destroyer, a cruiser, no, those are regular ships. Submarines, regular ships. So it's really battleships and aircraft carriers. And they had a few, big, heavy cruisers that you might call a capital ship, I guess. But generally, it's not really thought of that way. The battleships are, unique. The Japanese, I think, had something like 20-inch guns, 18 or 20-inch guns. American battleships had 9 16-inch guns. And American battleships were loaded for bear. They're all around the deck of the boat. They had anti-aircraft systems. There were probably 30 or 40 millimeter guns plus 50 caliber. They didn't really have 20 millimeter going on at the beginning of the war. And they might have had them as anti-aircraft guns maybe. And they would be plinking at all the planes trying to hit the battleship. Now, they trained the guys that used the guns pretty well on in the Navy boats and on the aircraft. They took a lot of trouble to train these people and teach them how to lead moving targets, and they tried. If you couldn't really get the coordination, the eye hand, and the timing, they would flunk you out because it was very serious. They did bring down a lot of aircraft. These airplane gunners brought down a lot of planes, and the Navy gunners brought down a lot of planes. They made it very hazardous. The Air Force figured out, and a lot of it was the Army Air Corps back then, they figured out ways to take bombers, which were propeller bombers, usually. Oh, they had all different versions. They had so many different bombers. Every few months they had a new bomber. They had propellers. They had twin engine bombers and 4-engine bombers and all kinds of bombers, And they would generally put a machine gun on the roof of the plane that would swivel. It had a round bubble. Later in the war, they armored the bubble, but in the beginning, it was not armored. It would just keep the wind and the rain out. in particles. Uh, and sometimes they had double machine guns, and some of the turrets, usually the front turret, the various turrets had a double machine gun. Usually the side doors, that on the side of each plane, they had a gun. So you had one on the roof, you had guns on either side, that's three. You had a gun in the front, which was normally a double turret, double gun, because fighter jets would try to fly at the cockpit and kill the pilots, then the plane crashes. So while they were trying to fly in and attack the pilots, there's a guy in the bubble in the front working double, twin machine guns. That's really pouring the lead out. So it was a dangerous thing for these fighter guys to make a run at the cockpit, but they did. And then you had, one on the roof, one on either side. That's three. You had one in the front, one in the back. Sometimes that was a double gun, usually a single. And then you had one in the belly to prevent planes from coming up. So what they did is they designed a formation. Maybe they put 15 bombers in a formation or something, or 20, I can't remember, some number like that. And as long as they held the formation, if the fighter jets tried to come in and get them, the fighter jets would get peppered with bullets, and goodbye fighter jet. Right? It wasn't a jet, fighter plane. They were propellant, and as long as they held the structure, and it was pretty ingenious. And if the fighters decided to penetrate through and they got through, they were in bad shape. They'd be getting sprayed with bullets all over the place. You got to understand, with that many guns on each plane, and you got 20 planes, you got bullets flying all over the place, and they had it set up in a way where these gunners wouldn't be shooting the other planes. Now, the problem set in when the flak came, and it took out some of the planes, and that left holes in the formation. Then they had to try to compensate, and trouble started. So the pilots, it was so fatal for them in World War II that they flew 25 missions and they were out. I mean, real missions, not, reconnaissance, combat, where they were bombing, And then they went back to the States, and there wasn't that many that made it. What did they do when they got back to the States? Well, the first thing they did was they got rest and recuperation, and then a lot of them, maybe not all of them, went on campaigns to raise money by selling U.S. bonds. I think it was Abbott and Costello during World War II, the two comedian guys. They went on a campaign to raise money, and they raised $70-something million back then, and it was more money than anyone else raised. So the movie stars back then would run around and raise money for the war effort, and some of the movie stars were in the military. Not all, but a good bunch of them. Even Ronald Reagan, I think, was in the military. I'm not sure if he was just maybe making films for them. A lot of them were in the military. They weren't Transformers back then, and they were in the military, and they really were in the military. And a lot of them that were making war hero movie pictures were never in the military. And, if you talk to World War II veterans, they're probably all gone now. The John Waynes and the Jimmy Cagney movies and the other, Broderick Crawford, and, those things were not realistic. They were designed to work on the psyche of the American public, but they did make real World War II movies, but they came after World War II, and they portrayed it, There was a good Vietnam movie that the vets said was really amazing. I think it was Apocalypse Now. That was the one. I know one guy was saying that when he sat down and the picture started to play, he could smell the jungle in Vietnam. You know, it was like not for real, but you know, it was pretty realistic. Um, okay, so it was a pretty dangerous job. And then they used them to train other pilots, and they would scare the pilots to pay attention to the training. And they would bang pilots out like crazy. They, you know, they tested them to make sure they had the reflexes and they didn't get disoriented from spinning around, and they had hearing and vision and all that. And then they started training them, and if they were bad, they washed them out. You know, they didn't play games. Now, if you were going to be a bad pilot, a lot of times they put you on flying freight and stuff, you know. They kept you out of combat. And when they hit the 25, they went home. They were training the other pilots because there were so many pilots being trained because they were losing them like crazy, and they kept developing new bombers, new fighters constantly. They got them really pretty sophisticated. Towards the end of the war, they got rid of on the fighter planes. They got rid of the 50 caliber machine guns. Because that's how they were basically attacking on the planes. They didn't use missiles and rockets much at the end of the war, but they were using 50 cal, and you had to really hit the other guy's plane pretty good to get it to break up. The idea was not that you try to kill the pilot, that you get his wings to break or his engine to burn or stuff like that, you know, his aileron and stabilizers. And, you know, you try to get pieces of the plane to fall off. And the planes were, you know, not all of them were built very solid. Um, and the 50 cal wasn't doing it. I mean, it would eventually. You had to get a lot of hits. So when they went to the 20 millimeter, the gun crews were saying, "Oh, this was a dream. You just, you know, a few rounds and the plane would break up." You know. Anyway, back to Putin. So what do we think Putin's doing? Well, let's go to ground zero here. Well, no, let's go to the basis. NATO is bringing weapons into Ukraine through Poland. They fly them in, or train transport, or car, or truck, and they put the weapons in Poland. They're staged in Poland. Poland has a border with Ukraine. They get along pretty good. And Poland would bring the weapons in on trains into Ukraine and on highways with trucks. Probably not a lot in cars or anything like that. Okay. That's how the weapons get into Ukraine, and then Ukraine would redeploy them around Ukraine, right? Okay, not hard to understand. So, why is Putin focusing on Ukraine? On Poland? Because he needs Poland to stop bringing the weapons into Ukraine, or Putin's going to lose the war. Period. So, Putin is at a point now where he has to make a decision. He can play the game with Trump and try to find a good ceasefire. A good ceasefire for Putin that he can walk away with would be all the land that Russia has occupied in Ukraine stays Russian territory permanently. Then he would want Ukraine to say, "I'm never going into NATO," and that would have to be agreed to. And then he has to get his people to buy into it to some extent. You know, Putin knows he could always get a bullet to the head, so he has to watch himself, you know. there's not going to be a vote of no confidence in Russia. Putin has an iron hand over that. The vote of no confidence for Putin is somebody trusted by him who walks over to him and puts a bullet in his head, you know. Like the organized criminals, what do? One of their kind gets arrested. Now, this didn't work in the 50s, even in the early 60s in America when the Mafia was reigning. You know, the street thugs and the gangs in Chicago and New York and all, you know, when they were running around big time. the If one of them got arrested, you know, generally he wouldn't talk. What were they getting arrested for? Narcotics? No, they didn't do narcotics. They did. They passed counterfeit money. They liked doing that. They would have people they know that were wannabes and stuff, and the people they would sell stolen goods to, and they would in turn sell it to other people. They'd give them $1,000 in counterfeit money and say, "You owe me 150. You know, will you give me the 150 in non-counterfeit money? I'll give you another 1,000." You know, that kind of thing. And they'd run around going to candy stores, movie theaters, department stores, spending the money, getting the real change. Now, if they got caught by the Secret Service, which was really not very common, the only time you would really get in trouble is when the Secret Service grabbed you, you had a lot of counterfeit money on you. You know, that wasn't a very common occurrence, okay? They would try to go to places that wouldn't check carefully for counterfeit money. They wouldn't want to go to the racetracks because those guys had some good training in it, you know. So anyway, they would also get a truckload of stolen TVs and pass them around. People would pass them out. So they were fencing. They would do furs, expensive clothes, perfumes, anything they could hijack, you know. They would, when they hijacked the truck, sometimes they'd have to beat the guy up, but a lot of times they would just tell the guy, "Listen, you know, just relax, you know, here's $50, here's $100. You know, they sometimes took the guy's registration or his driver's license and they wrote down his name and address, and they said, "If you say anything, we'll come visit you and kill you and your family. Or you could just sit here and enjoy the $100 and that's it." And you know, that's a lot of times they hide. A lot of times they just stole the whole truck and told the guy to go sit on the side of the road, and they told him, "Wait 2 hours before you report it, or we'll kill you," or something, right? And in 2 hours, they get the truck off the road, they get the load off in a warehouse somewhere, and then they park the truck somewhere, and then where the police can find it, wipe it for prints or whatever, and that's the end of it, right? So these are the rackets they did. They did bookmaking, so they took bets, loan sharking, numbers, stolen goods, fencing, protection, extortion, blackmail, card games were a popular thing, which were illegal. You know, so that was what they did. So when they got arrested, did they face 25 years in jail? They didn't. Yeah, they got nailed for murder. Yeah. Were they going around robbing banks and stagecoaches and trains? No. No. They look down on people. They call them a cowboy. You know, somebody that gets a gun and goes and robs a bank is a cowboy. An idiot to them. You know. That's not how you operate. You know. So they, when they got arrested, they frequently got a big jail term. So they didn't rat each other out. They got 2 years, 3 years, 1 year. They didn't care. They knew they'd get out. And what happened when they get out? All the friends would have a party for them. Everybody'd kick in 500, $1,000, and he first day out, he's got $5,000 or $10,000 in his pocket back then, which was a lot of money, and he could buy himself a car, get himself clothes, get a place to live, and he's right back on his feet immediately. Then he goes down to the social club, and they play cards, they hang out, and then he starts going on scores with them, and they infiltrate him into doing the business. But they didn't do the drugs. They stayed away from it because they knew that it was dirty, real dirty, and it ruined neighborhoods and everything because the junkies were so bad. And they didn't want to ruin the neighborhoods. They were in Italian neighborhoods, and they liked it. And if anybody came around there and was starting to sell drugs in the neighborhood, 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them would get the baseball bats, and they'd get a hold of the guys that were doing it when nobody was around, when it wouldn't get caught. And they'd beat them badly, put them in the hospital for a month, They wouldn't come back. If they saw people trying to do purse snatching in the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood would go to the Mafia, not the police, and they say these bad kids are coming here on bicycles from Prospect Park or some other neighborhood, and they're robbing purses. So they say, okay. So they would hang around in their Cadillacs and wait till they saw the kids, and then what would happen? Baseball bats. They wouldn't come back again. Motorcycle gang come in the neighborhood, what would happen? Guns, baseball bats, probably guns also. They wouldn't let them there. They wouldn't back away. No matter who it was that came in their neighborhood, it was their neighborhood. If it was a sophisticated group, they would do what they called the sit down, and they'd say, well, this is our neighborhood, and we don't go in your neighborhood. What the heck you doing here? And they would make it very plain to the people that they will fight, and they have a lot of other gangs, in the area that will come help them, and they would try to settle it, But wild people, a dope deal of burglars would come to the neighborhood, right? They knew how to catch burglars, they knew how to catch purse snatchers, they knew how to catch people breaking into cars. They didn't want any of that. So the people in the neighborhood loved them and protected them and went to them when they had a problem. And the problem could be a lot of things. They might need, their kid wants to get into college, he didn't have the grades. So what happens? The Mafia guys go to the politicians that they're corrupting and paying off and say, hey, this guy needs to get into this college, please help us, Then if the Mafia guys needed a favor from these people, like an alibi, or they had to store some hot goods in their house or something, they would call the favor in and they'd get it, And that's the way it operated. Then along came narcotics, which would have been in the early, mid-60s, and then by the late 60s, I'd say they were in on it, because there was too much money. There was just too much money. Then they started getting caught, and they're getting prison sentences of 15, 25 years, life, 40 years, and they were ratting people out, They didn't want to go to jail for, the guy's 35, 40 years old, he's going to go to jail for 25 years. They didn't want to do that, So then the whole thing started getting bad, and it, didn't work too good. It was never the same thing. And then other contenders came in with the drugs that were very violent and wanted to take it over. So they never really did well with the drugs. And then they started with all this legal gambling, on Indian reservations in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and many other places. And that really hurt them. And then they started with off-track betting in New York. You go to a store and you walk in and you could bet on almost anything legally. Uh, so they, you know, that hurt the mafia, you know. So are they still around? Yeah, they're still around. I don't know exactly what they do anymore. They probably are in cybercrime, and they'll find things to do. They heavily moved into the pornography business when it became digital and with the movies and online, and they got into it really big time, and of course they had the money to bankroll it, and then they open up this business with massage parlors and running prostitution that way, and they got into that. And that's a dirty business, but they do it. And the problem with that is um, the the prostitutes like to take narcotics, and they would bring the narcotics to the place of work, and this could cause problems. But they deal with that. So they were doing that. Uh, they would do money loaning, people in business. They started doing things like that. Many years ago, I was in between jobs. It was before Christmas. I finished graduate school in California, and I went back to New York for, I don't know why I was so stupid and did that, but I did. And I needed a job, so I wound up working for some company that sold photocopiers. And it was a real lousy job, schlepping machines around in the snow in New York and demonstrating it. I was rather good at it. I didn't like it. So I'm in a business in the garment center in New York, and there's a guy there that FedEx comes in and gives him a package, and the guy, looks at me like he gives me the once over, and then he figured out I was just a computer copier salesman, and I looked like I was a New Yorker. I had a black leather coat on and stuff, so I was, you know, he knew I knew the streets just by sizing me up in a few seconds. And then he opened up this box out in this room there, and it was a cardboard box like this, about 3 or 4 inches thick, and was all full of money. They're moving money with FedEx. I mean, it must have been $40,000, $50,000. These guys got so much money, they just put it in FedEx. Unbelievable. I was really laughing to myself over that one. So I don't know what it was. It was maybe the bookmaker sent him the money, or he won, more than likely, he won a bet, and the bookmaker paid him off. Because they'll pay off. If the bookmaker doesn't pay off, and the streets, you could find the people that the bookkeeper reports to. He's probably in a group, we can call it, or a family, and you just go there and say, hey, I want to bet, and he's reneging. That gives everybody a bad name, and the guy will, if you can get an audience with him, he'll sit there with you and ask you what happened, what was the bet, how much money. What happened when you asked for the money? What did he say? Do you owe him other money? Do you owe another bookmaker money? No, no, no. So he just decided to beat you out of the money. Yeah. All right, I'll look into it. And he might look into it, and the bookmaker says, no, I just ripped the guy off. He wins too much. He's too good at it. I want gamblers. He's no gambler. He plays the system or something. So then he gives the mafioso guy, 10 or 20% of it, and then you, that's it. You lose. You're not going to get it back unless you go grab the guy yourself, and start taking a knife and cutting his arm and telling him you're going to come back and take his neck off. If you got the stomach to do that and he thinks you'll do it, he might pay you off, or he might try to get you killed, or he might go to his mafioso guy and they may come to you and say, you can't do that, he's protected. You ever try anything like this again, we'll kill you. Or, look, there's people that will say the mafioso guys are not the man of steel, and if these mafioso guys mess with them, they'll kill them. They'll throw them off a roof, they'll shoot them, they'll burn them down with a car, they'll throw acid in their face, they'll take an attack dog and throw the dog on him and walk away. There's a lot of things they could do. They could burn his house while he's in it. So anyway, let's get back to Putin. So what is Putin doing? Putin is testing NATO, which means he's testing Trump. And he's testing Poland and Romania, the whole operation. Let me do a quick probe here on artificial intelligence. I want to ask it to research something. It's good for certain things like that. You never want to ask it to interpret the Bible. You're always going to get junky, crazy answers from that. I wouldn't bother with that. But okay. What countries does Russia have troops, weapons on their borders now? Let's see what it finds. What this will do is go through massive amount of news stories in a matter of seconds. It already gave me the answer. Well, we got Ukraine. Russia has 600,000 troops by Ukraine, and then Belarus. Russia's loaded with troops and weapon systems inside Belarus. Belarus is an ally. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Baltic states. Russia has rebuilt forces to 20,000 to 30,000 troops along that 1,300 kilometers, so that's 780 miles, roughly, 800 miles, roughly. Combined border, including the Kaliningrad enclave. Kaliningrad's a little piece of land that's formerly Russia. Politically, it's Russia. Poland, he has 10 to 16,000 Russian troops are nearby, via Kaliningrad and Belarus. Okay, then he's got Finland, 5 to 10,000 troops on the 1,340 kilometer border with Finland. Georgia, Russia has 3 to 5,000 troops by Georgia. Moldova, China, Mongolia. I don't think those are pretty high. I think the risk would be Finland, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, of course Ukraine, and that's where the risk is. So I mean, if he goes after like Estonia and Finland, I don't understand how that's really going to help him because Poland's still going to be ferrying weapons into Ukraine, so he has to stop that. That's his primary problem. To stop that, he could ask Poland to stop it. He's done that. It didn't work. Poland's not interested in stopping it. So, what's next? Well, you have to impose your will on Poland, and that's called war. And that would cause the immediate activation of Article 5 of NATO. And NATO's already been getting ready, moving more troops towards the east, which is Russia, and NATO would be ready to spring into action. They're on guard for something like this from Putin. So this is what I've been telling you all along. Hold on a second. An unusual email. Oh, it's one of these guys. It's some sort of scam. They try to tell you to run advertising on your YouTube channel for them. And it's the scam there is really, I think there's a threefold way it can go. One is it's going to break terms of service with YouTube somehow, and you're going to get in trouble with YouTube, and it's people that hate you trying to set you up. That's possible. I don't do it ever because I don't do advertising. Then I'm making merchandise out of the people, and I can't do that. I can't use God's name and make merchandise out of the people. Okay, so that's no good. The other thing is they'll tell you that you got to invest some money into becoming one of their advertising sources. And you'll never, once you give them the money, that's it, the scam's over, unless they can get more money out of you. Or you'll actually run some sort of advertisement for them, and they might get some people to actually buy some product they're reselling, and they'll never send you the commission. You'll never get any money out of them. So anyway you slice the cake, any of these people that do that. Now, if it's a real thing, this is what it would look like. It would be, hey, my name is, Steve, Brown, and I am I'm the president of, Silver Blade Knife Company, and we make self-defense knives, and I heard you talk to people about knives, and we'd like to talk to you. Maybe we could sponsor a YouTube video or two of yours where we could send you some knives and you could put them on the show and demonstrate them and show people how to use them. And we could work a discount for the people with a code, and, let us know if you have some interest, and we'll send you a few of our knives to start with, and you can see the quality, and then you can talk with us, and we'll go slow, and if it's something you feel comfortable with, we can proceed. If not, you can keep the knives and enjoy them. This is what it would kind of sound like, okay? Or it could be some guy that wants to give you, it could be running shoes, it could be flashlights, it could be anything. I don't get people like that. First of all, I wouldn't do it if I did. But I don't get them because, they're looking for somebody that has, 250,000 or 1 million viewers. With my size audience, it's not worth their time. If I had 1.5 million viewers, I'd get all kinds of people contacting me. And they send you lots of free goods, They send you lots of free goods. Okay, so I imagine if you're up in the 4 million range, which is when you get to 4 million subscribers, the herd on YouTube is very, very thin. People will if they get your address somehow, they'll send you all sorts of things for free. Clothing, survival stuff, you name it. Crazy things you'd never think of. They'll just send it to you and say, if you'd like to promote this, we'll do a discount code where your viewers get 10-20% off, and we'll send you 10%, and you'll have a commission and blah, 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 and you'd get stuff almost every week. You'd get 2 or 3 things, or maybe 10 things. If you're a real schnorrer, you take those free samples and you just put them on eBay and sell them. You could do that. It's not illegal. They probably never know it, nor would they ever care about it, nor could they ever do anything about it. If, they can't send you a sample and say, if you're not going to work with us, you have to send the sample back. It doesn't work that way, because that's illegal. They're imposing work and expense on you without your permission. They can't enforce anything like that. So, can Putin take a war with NATO? No, he can't even hold up with Ukraine getting weapons from NATO countries. He can't even hold up. Would the EU join in with NATO countries and fight against Putin too? You bet. They said they would. Is there a chance, a snowball's chance in the lake of fire, that this guy Putin could hold up against NATO? And remember, it's NATO and Ukraine. And America's in NATO. Could he hold up? No, come on. He'd be flat on his back in 2 weeks. He'd be signing unconditional surrender in a couple of weeks. You know how many good aircraft would be flying over Russia dropping bombs? Rafales, Typhoons, Eurofighters. How many aircraft carriers would be floating around near Russia? I mean, a lot of countries got aircraft carriers, okay? I mean, Russia would be, committing hara-kiri, suicide. Now, how can Russia do this? Well, Iran, let's start there. Iran's a problem child, okay, to the daughter of Babylon, America. And tensions are high, okay? And Israel can't stand them. Netanyahu personally would love to demolish Iran. Now, again, I've told you the key factor here in BRICS is to sell the oil off the dollar and off the euro. And the big sellers in BRICS are Iran and Russia, natural gas too. Okay? And if they're losing their oil or their ability to sell the oil, of course, against the sanctions and so forth, BRICS is not going anywhere. Now, they also get oil from the UAE, but the UAE would be far easier to tell them to cut that out. They're very friendly with Saudi Arabia. While the UAE is in BRICS, they can be managed, I think. So, the UAE is not a military player. They probably have an army, but it's probably more just tokenism and to stop, drug cartels, gangs, criminals, organizing, and, stuff like that. I don't think they got it. They do go on military excursions, but it's not a real, it's got a military, but like it couldn't hold up against Israel. Let's put it that way, or something like that. All right. They don't put their big money into their military. They put their big money into developments in the country. Office buildings, residences, malls, amusement areas, infrastructure, roads, things like that. So, Putin would need Iran to start trouble in the Middle East. And how would Iran start trouble in the Middle East? Well, there's several ways. And Iran could do all of them at once. One is to shut down the Persian Gulf by the Straits of Hormuz. The way to do that would probably be multi-pronged. One way is to put missile launchers on the land near the Straits of Hormuz that could reach well into the Straits of Hormuz or across it. The next would be to put naval mines in the waters in the Straits of Hormuz. The third thing would be to put ships near the Straits of Hormuz. They're go-fast boats. It would not be hard for them to leave 30 or 40 of them there all the time. They got over 1,500. They could leave 200 there if they wanted to, but they don't need to. If somebody decides to cross against their wishes, 4 or 5 go-fast boats will approach them and say, we're going to blow you out of the water, turn around, that kind of thing. They could also put the container ships they've converted into drone carriers and missile launching ships, and all that. They have very few conventional warships that look like a NATO destroyer or cruiser or something like that. They don't have many of those. They got junky submarines. They don't have much aircraft, and that's about all. So they could do that. In addition, while they're doing that, they can attack the American military bases in the Middle East. America keeps about 58,000 soldiers here. And they may not bother attacking Israel, because if they attack Israel, they're going to be in distress. So just leave Israel the heck alone, and what's America going to do? Well, that would be a mistake, because they probably think Trump will come and say, hey, let's settle this without bloodshed. But that's not really what would happen. Trump would call Netanyahu up and say, okay, I command you, go attack Iran. He wouldn't use those words, but we'll back you, go get Iran. And then Israel would start attacking Iran. Now, this isn't going to be enough. What has to happen additionally is North Korea attacks South Korea, for real. And China would attack Japan and Taiwan and the Philippines simultaneously, I believe. Maybe Guam. But definitely Japan and Taiwan. Maybe not the others. Now, what does America do? Well, America has to respond in Europe with Russia, has to respond with Iran in the Middle East, has to respond with North Korea and China and Taiwan. And, can America handle all this? No. No, it's too much. I don't believe they can. Now, Trump may think he can, but it's too much. Is it likely we're going to see that? I don't think so right now. It says in the scriptures, wars and rumors of wars. The only war we've really seen that's other than attacking Israel, which of course is different. The other wars that we've seen is basically Ukraine and Russia. Now, when God destroys the nations, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. And, that's fire and brimstone. And that's probably going to happen on the day of vengeance on one day. Now, the wars for them to destroy the nations is going to take years. If Russia and NATO decide to go to war, it could start rather quickly. But it's going to take a while till it peaks. That being said, could I give you a guarantee that it's not going to happen? No, if Putin thinks that it's really going to happen, that if Putin pushes it, he might be thinking, I fight with them for two weeks to 30 days and they'll come to the peace table and I'll get a good deal because they'll know I'm crazy and I mean it. So he might try that. You say, well, Russia could hang on for 2 to 4 weeks, and by then we'll have a really good ceasefire. They'll stop supporting Ukraine. They'll let me grab a good piece of Ukraine, and they'll leave us alone, and they'll lift the sanctions, and I'll get all my money back. And then we could go ahead and continue with BRICS and break them out economically. That's Putin's thinking. What's Trump's thinking? Trump knows all that. He's not as stupid as most presidents. So, but I don't know what he'll do. He'd be afraid of Putin. Trump talks war, but Trump doesn't do war. He doesn't have the stomach for it. Trump is no Patton. He's no Eisenhower. He doesn't have it. Trump's a businessman turned politician, not a warrior. He's not for that. When war sinks in, he tries to stop it. He don't want it. It's not his thing. Let's go back to basics. It's still the bad age, Israel's punishment age. Satan's the god of this age, not world, this age. And all the leaders of every country in the world are answering to the unclean spirits. So why does Satan want wars? He just wants wars against Israel. Because that's his threat. God will rule the world through Israel, the head of all the nations, serving him. So that's the only nation he really wants to see war against, is Israel. Destroy it. If it stops being a nation, Satan's much more relieved. And then, if no house barks, hey! Then if he distributes the Jews around the world and persecutes them, like he's done in the past, not that long ago either, World War II, he can get rid of the Jews. And then he's even going to breathe easier, but none of this is going to happen. Do I think this might actually go? It might. It might, because Putin sees he's losing. Putin's losing. Oil refineries are going. He's losing. Is Ukraine losing? Yeah, they're suffering. But I think they'll ultimately take out Russia. They'll get longer range missiles from NATO and they'll use them and they'll take out more oil refineries. Trump really wants to see the oil refineries get taken out to hurt Russia's economy and hope they throw the towel in. China may, at this point, see Trump as intractable. In other words, they can't work with Trump. And they realize that Trump, using his tariffs and sanctions, is dominating the world and is wrecking any chances of BRICS and enemies of China and all that, and they're not happy. So they might think that it's time to get rid of America. We know that's going to happen. We know there's sleeper agents in the many millions there. So let's see what Putin's doing. Putin, if you're going to play the sleeper agents, which have had a tremendously long amount of time to be prepared, and North Korea hits South Korea, and China hits Japan and Taiwan, and Russia hits some NATO countries, and Iran starts hitting American bases around the Middle East. Well, if Trump decides to jump in and fight back, it's going to go pretty bad for him. We'll watch this closely. Putin could be doing this just to get a better peace deal out of Ukraine by scaring NATO and America. Now, one thing with Trump, it's rather simple to understand. A war with Putin is going to cost what? $100 billion, $500 billion. It's going to be super expensive, and Trump doesn't want to spend it. So, maybe he'll go to war. I don't know. He's mad at Trump, but he knows if he fights Russia, he's going to take missiles in America, and he knows China, North Korea, Belarus, and maybe some other countries in the stand countries, maybe Azerbaijan or something. They're all going to start joining in, and he's going to keep getting hurt. We gotta watch, guys. I think Putin may cross the line, okay? And NATO may also get sick and tired of Putin, and he might send more drones into Romania, which is in NATO, or Poland, or Estonia, and then NATO could just say, we had enough, and say, okay, this is Article 5. And then planes start flying over Russia and dropping bombs, and then they just break Putin that way. Does China have enough guts to go to war? That's the big question. Putin can't do it without China. We don't know. If there's a war, what's it going to look like? Europe will be up in smoke. Hundreds of thousands of people will die, millions. Be all kinds of interruptions of air travel, railroad travel, bridges will get blown up. Tourism will come to a screeching halt. Cruise ships will stop sailing. There'll be naval battles. Gold isn't going to go to 4,000 or 5,000 from 3,600. It's going to go to 10,000. Oil's going to go to probably, if something like this happens, at least 250, 300 a barrel. Some people say 500 a barrel. gasoline will be very precious. Trump will sell subsidized price gas in America. If gas is $3 a gallon now, Trump will probably take it up to 4.50 and leave it there, where other places in the world might be at $18. Europe will suffer for gas. Trump will have to help out, which he will. They'll try to accelerate BRICS. It's going to be tough to do. Putin will try hard to hit America, not American bases per se. He'll leave that to Iran. He'll try to hit He'll try to get America with missile launches from planes, submarines, drones. He'll get some in. Now, the launching of the sleeper agents could be devastating to America. And that could make China comfortable. North Korea's nuts. He'll go attack anybody, you know. He'd go attack a herd of Tyrannosaurus Rexes on steroids, you know. They don't exist, but he would. He's nuts. Iran is not that kind of nuts. They're scared, but if they see an opportunity to knock out America and Israel, they'll try. If it's realistic, you know. China isn't going to be terribly focused on Taiwan. They would probably just use Taiwan to get America to stretch their assets thin. It would be a pretty odd day when you see America attack China in the homeland, because then they know China's going to attack America in the homeland. So I don't know if they would do it so quick. Oh, it'd be devastating. Wars would break out all over the place. So is it possible that scripture, for the end time signs of birth pangs, wars and rumors of wars, we don't really have wars? Well, we've had wars with Israel, haven't we? Yeah, but they're not that big, and they don't really affect the nations, and it is the time of recompenses, and that's payback to the nations over Zion. And it's really been more of a payback over to Israel because of Israel's sins and God not leaving them unpunished. So yeah, it could all happen. Will this be unbelievably bad? Yeah. If it doesn't stop fairly immediately right after it starts, it'll be horrible. Who would be immune from this? Well, right now it looks like South and Central America wouldn't be too heavily affected, but being end times, they will be affected. Well, maybe not in any way that we've seen in the past, but I think they will be affected. I don't see any of those countries going around and joining the Russians or joining the Chinese, maybe Nicaragua or something with China, but they don't have much. In general, not much of anything with them. I don't know how they're going to get it, but probably from God direct. I'll be right back, and then we'll continue. I think it's only fair that I remind you that this could be the beginning of the end of the daughter of Babylon. I can't guarantee it yet, but this could be it. It could be it. Now there's an attack in Revelation 18. And we can go there. Verse 1, 18:1 Revelation. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. Now, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Okay, so let's go back to verse 1. I saw another angel come down from heaven. So this angel's descending to earth, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. Now, let us go to Ezekiel 43. These are the kind of things you never hear from the church people. Verse 1, which is the return, well, not the return, the going into the next temple of the glory of God of Israel. Afterward, he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looketh towards the east. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. Now, is he coming down from heaven or coming from the east? Up is not east. He's coming down from heaven. From the east, rather. Sorry. And his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. Revelation 18:1. Compare. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted or shined with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice. Does it sound like the same angel, which is Michael, the glory of God of Israel? It does to me. How about you? And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The birds are unclean spirits. So, yeah, obviously that's American, no problem there, right? Okay. Now the word for fallen is 4098. Let's see how Strong's uses this word. Whoops. Hold on. Well, it means fail or fall, so we'll just keep reading. Verse 3. For all heathen nations, or all goyim, have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. In other words, they're lining up with Trump and worshiping the unclean spirits with Trump, that Trump worships, that kind of thing. Drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth, Trump and his tariffs and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. So this angel's making this announcement to the believers and the Israelites to get out of town. And that is called the next great Exodus. That's what we call it, right? Okay. Ezekiel chapter 20, starting in verse 33, explains the next great Exodus rather well, as does Jeremiah 23 and Jeremiah, I think it's 16 or 17. It says, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins. I don't know, maybe if you're living there and paying them taxes and voting, you're a partaker in that. I'm not sure what that means. And that you receive not of her plagues, the hits that are coming on her. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her lawlessness. Reward her even as she rewarded you, speaking to the believers in Israel, and double unto her, double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. So she gets a double shot of the wrath of the Lord. Israel had a double punishment, and now we get a double blessing. But America just gets destroyed. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. That's how arrogant they are. I saw Trump sitting there on TV the other day making that upside down triangle with his fingers, sicko, you know, sending secret hand signals out, it's a sicko. Therefore, shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning, and famine. Now the drought in America keeps progressing. That's going to cause famine, food shortage. And she shall be utterly burned with fire. Well, we've covered the fires, haven't we? They're spreading. They're getting worse. They're coming closer to the cities. And we're getting the drought getting worse. Do people wake up? No, they don't want to believe it. They're in a delusion. And she shall be utterly burned with fire. There you are. For strong is Jehovah Elohim who judgeth her. He's not pleading, he's judging. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her. They'll cry in mourning over her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. It's the Satan bots that are really going to cry over her and lament, because they know the country is pure, straight up satanic, and the leaders are transactional, and, well, not all of them understand transactional, but they know the leaders are satanic. And they take great solace in that. When they see the smoke of her burning. It's already going on, but not enough to make them cry yet. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city. Now, the word Babylon is really Babel. It means confusion. Now, here it's referencing the city. For in 1 hour is thy judgment come, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. No, this is going to be more when the whole country's gone, not just DC. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple and silk, and scarlet, and all thine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, and of brass, and iron and marble. All the expensive stuff. And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses, chariots, which are cars, I guess, and slaves and souls of men. Slaves. What do you think Epstein was about? And the fruits that thy soul lusted after and departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee. You know, $50,000 newborn baby goat cashmere sweaters and stuff, right? And thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. And saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. In an hour, kids, let's look up the word for one. Strong's number 3391 in the Greek. It's basically numero uno, number one. And the word for hour. It means, let's check Strong's on this. Strong's first choice is an hour, literally or figuratively. Okay? For in 1 hour, so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? Well, the smoke's going to be seen pretty far. And they cast dust on their heads and cried. So if they cast dust on their heads, they weren't really standing on the ocean on their boats. They were probably moored up somewhere else on land in America, because they couldn't see the daughter of Babylon from Europe or Asia, so they probably were docked up somewhere else and landing and walking around. Cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. So nobody's living there anymore. So everyone who had ships is making money. So if you were, well off enough to, write a check for $480 million and buy yourself a big container ship, you'd probably make a lot of money renting it out. Satan and his people make sure you never have that much money. If you start accumulating money, they'll drag you into their crooked courts with their crooked judges and take the money away from you. Can you understand it? Or they'll have the governments take the money away from you. Do you understand what you're dealing with here? Okay, so don't be feeling sorry for them when it hits them. Our God is a just God. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you holy apostles, which are in heaven, and except for one, John, and prophets, which are pretty much up there, except for Elijah and Enoch. They're in Israel now. For God hath avenged you on her. So don't get bummed out over this. God destroyed it to avenge the believers in Israel. And if you're a believer, you're in Israel. How could you not be? All Israel shall be saved. Find me the scripture that says all the churches will be saved. I like to see it. It doesn't exist. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more. That's D.C., the great city. Now, when you read the daughter of Babylon scriptures, it talks about cities, plural, different pieces of geography. It's the whole country gets it, but apparently it starts with D.C., which will throw the whole place into turmoil, because that's where they run it from. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers, that's not Pied Piper, I guess it's playing like trombone, saxophone, trumpets, probably trumpets, I guess. Or pipes, it could be singers? Yeah, it could be singers. With pipes means windpipes. Could be singers, maybe. It might be. And trumpeters, yeah, that's trumpeters, not pipe. It could be singers. Shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found, and any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more in thee. So if they're rejoicing in heaven over this, you're going to be bummed out. Whose side are you on? You see, this is a problem I get, and I've been seeing it day after day after day. No offerings. People think I'm giving them bad news, and I'm doing, fear porn and war porn. I'm not. I'm giving you the reality of this. And if you're getting bummed out, you're not thinking straight. This is the best thing for you. This is God's will. And I get punished because I tell you this. Oh, no offerings. For him, he's giving us bad news. We want everything to continue to forever. We want the Satan bots to be multimillionaires and billionaires while we're poor and suffering. And you want to bring children into the world to be poor and suffering. And you want Pfizer giving the kids vaccines. Come on, wake up. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. That's America. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. And people are upset with me that I'm explaining that this is going to happen. You know how hard that is for me and how bad it is for you. Whose side are you on? You know? You want to get, into New Jerusalem and ultimately heaven, you got to be on Jehovah's side. Listen, Kirk was a Satan botter. They'd never be calling how sad they are. Trump worshiping, saying prayers for Kirk. Pence flying Kirk's wife on the Air Force Two. All this is only for Satan bots. If Kirk wasn't a Satan bot, never in a million years would they ever do anything like this. If Kirk was a true believer, not a Satan bot, not a wolf in sheep's clothing, you think they would ever fly his wife on Air Force Two and make a Trump would pray for the guy and all? Are you kidding? Come on, get a reality shock. Gosh, you make my job hard. They don't feel bad when true believers get killed. They don't worry about that at all. They might go through the motions because they killed the guy and they're celebrating and they're making lies about it, Okay, let's go to Isaiah 47 and read that since we just read this. That's another DOB scripture. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babel. Sit on the ground. There's no throne, daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Well, no throne means DC is gone, I would say. And the economy, we know, is going down quickly in America. Take the millstones and grind meal, though food shortage, but still food around. Probably the economy is breaking down. You're not able to get what you want. You got to grind the food. Uncover thy locks. Make the leg. Bare the leg. Uncover the thigh and pass over the river. So now you're walking through the waters like a poor person. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. Wow, that sounds very transactional. I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. He's going to come at him as a god. As for our Redeemer, think year of redemption, Jehovah of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Does it say Holy One of the churches? No. It really says, well, it says the Holy of Israel, really, I think. But, okay. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness. I guess the lights are out. There is no 3 days of darkness in prophecy. Something like that happened in Egypt. It's not happening. They spread this lying rumor. There's no prophecy scripture for that to occur. Sit down in silence. Get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Okay, it's over. Now that's that Columbia piece of garbage. That's the Statue of Liberty, the Columbia Motion Pictures icon, the statue on the roof of the Capitol building, that woman, that's Columbia. That's who they named the Capitol after. That's the image, I suppose, representing the whore of Babylon, or the daughter of Babylon, something like that. I don't know. I don't care. It's just this stupid idolatry garbage. The Lady of Kingdoms. I think that's all because they're so high on this Columbia thing. They even have a university named Columbia in New York City, in Manhattan, I believe. It's a pretty good one. It's not like Harvard or Yale or Princeton, but it's up there, like NYU or something like that, you know. I was wroth with my people. I have polluted my inheritance and given them into thy hand. I have polluted my hand, given it a hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. That's upon the ancient, probably the Israelites, North American Indians. Thou hast very heavily laid thy yoke. And that's like on Israel, the yoke of America and stuff like that. You know, go fight for Gaza, get your soldiers killed, and then give it to Trump. You know, that kind of thing, right? And thou sayest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart. See, they ignore, Satan and them ignore the scriptures. They think they're going to make it. And the people who follow them, of course, have the same attitude. Till they shatter. Tough on them. Neither didst remember the latter end of it. Yeah, they don't pay attention to it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow. A widow would refer married to the land, so she's not going to lose her land, the United States. Neither shall I know the loss of children. See, this Columbia thing probably is some sort of a demon, okay? And we don't know. You know, who cares? But these two things shall come now it's this woman is flat chested, and it looks kind of like it could be a man dressed as a woman also, you know. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children, those are the Satan bots, and widowhood, losing the land, it's a desolate place. They shall come upon thee in their perfection. Whoa. For the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thy enchantments. Yep, witchcraft. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. It hath perverted thee. And they're perverted. Monarcho. And thou hast said in thy heart, I am and none else besides me. Trump thinks this is the greatest, Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. They're not going to know where it's coming from. And mischief, that's a similar word, bad things, shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Not going to understand what happened when it happens. They'll be perplexed. They'll be perplexed when they're dead. They'll be perplexed about what happened. Stand now, because they're following the rules of Satan, and they think they're going to stay in power. The rules of Satan are sin, and Jehovah doesn't care about that. It just swats it out of the way, blows it out of the way. It's meaningless. Stand now with thy enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. Well, that would be like starting with George Washington the Mason, get it? To profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. Use your witchcraft and see if you could win. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. I'd say they're wearied now in America. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly procrastinators, those are your Chaldeans. That's what the Chaldeans did in old-time Babylon. Stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Again, he's mocking them. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. There you go again. The fire. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor to sit before. So they're not going to be able to, heat the houses up or probably cook. Their power will be out, I guess. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. When it says his quarter, some of them are going to go home to the countries they came from, like the agricultural workers, but their quarter isn't the meaning go back to your own country. You know the expression of the British in America, you'll quarter the troops. See, the quarter means house. So it says go back to your quarter. It's like the military guy says, where are your quarters? Over on the east side of the base, where is your house? Where's your domicile? Where do you live? Where are your quarters? So they'll go back to their house. They'll hold up in their holes, and they won't come out, and they'll get killed because they're going to be killing them in the street. The young men are going to get killed in the street. They're going to take the babies and bash their heads open. It's probably Muslim warriors that are coming in because they destroy the idols. Now, the Chinese atheists or Buddhists, they're not caring about idols. They got them all over China. They're not going to make a point of destroying idols. The Russians, Russian Orthodox Church with idols, they're not going to worry about it. The Hindus, they thrive on idols. They're not going to worry about it. The Catholics, they thrive on idols. True believers, they're not going to come attack America. So, there you got it. So, I speak the truth, and then I get punished by the people. They don't do offerings because they don't want to hear this. Well, you need to hear it, or you forget about it, and you're going to drift back to just being comfortable back in America. And if you're comfortable and happy, and you're back in America, and you're really sad to see America get it, well, you've got a problem. You should be happy that the thing's gone. And that's the beginning of the end of the age. The end will happen cataclysmically after America goes. Can the downfall of America be the day of vengeance? I go around back and forth on that. It could be. It could be on that day, and it could be that precedes the rest. But you see, it may not be, because when they leave to go, let Zion come to mind, then they say, let's enter into a never-ending, covenant with the Lord. They probably have the law in their heart. They have a heart of flesh. They already saw Yeshua in the clouds, and they got the everlasting life. Okay? And they're coming to stop in the wilderness on their way to Israel, but they're on their way to Israel. But then again, it says that the kings and other people will bring them to Israel, so I'm a little confused about all of this, about stopping in the wilderness. Who does and who doesn't, I don't have any tremendous clarity about that. I'm not sure. Maybe it has something to do with timing, I don't know. But yeah, this could be all on the day of vengeance. But you see, before the destruction of the country, the people got to get out. Okay? A lot of the people probably aren't going to want to get out. They're going to try to heal Babylon. They're going to hang on to that America. They like America. I remember America in the 50s, the quality of life was rather relaxed. People worried about what? Vacations, cars, buying this, buying that. People didn't live going into credit in the 50s. I don't think credit cards existed. People wrote checks. They had a checkbook. They didn't have credit cards. I don't. Maybe they had gasoline credit cards or something. I don't know. The credit cards weren't really going on. They weren't going on. No, it wasn't really happening. Anyway, there was still a lot of fear in America. They had the Korean War in the early 50s. That had people fearful, believe me. Um, Soldiers got killed. There was a girl I knew for many years in the neighborhood, and I went to her house one day, and I was 9, 10, and there was a picture in the house of her father wearing a military uniform, and he got killed in the war, and it wasn't World War II. Vietnam didn't happen, so it was Korea. I, Unless he got killed in some other event, probably Korea. So a lot of people got killed in Korea. Another stupid war to stop communism. Uh, Things used to be, pretty easy going. Um, Kids played out in the street and in the parks by themselves. I mean, kids that were 7, 6, 7, nothing was happening. This was New York too. And then we would, at maybe an age of 12, 11, 12, kids would start using the subways and the buses to travel all through New York City. And you really didn't have much trouble with that at all. We didn't have problems. Um, Everything was cheap. Food was cheap. Food was more like organic, although nobody had the term organic. They did have health food stores, but the vast majority, maybe 3% or 5% of people knew what they were. You know, the doctors were cheap. I mean, in New York City, doctors would make a house call to the house. I think for $7 or $5 even. I don't remember when it was. It used to be 5 and then it went up. They'd come to the house. Doctors would see patients in the office in the morning, and they'd go to the hospital in the morning if they had patients in the hospital, and then they would make house calls. And they got what was called MD license plates. I think this was unique to New York City because it was a parking issue to some extent. And they would park in front of the building or the house, double park, and they had the MD plates, and the cops wouldn't give them a ticket for double parking with MD plates, um, because that was the service, that's how they did it anyway. And the doctor had a little black leather bag, and he came in, and he had, uh, his instruments in there, the stethoscope, the thing you lift in your mouth, and your ears, and your nose, and he had alcohol swabs, or alcohol in a bottle, whatever they had then. And then he had hypodermic needles and different drugs. And that was probably about it, what he had. I never looked at mine, I don't know. And they wore suits, the doctors wore suits. And they'd come in and what would they do? They'd look in your throat, they'd look in your ears, your mouth, and listen to your heart, and take your temperature. And then they would make a plan, which was usually give you an injection. And you got better pretty quick. And then a lot of the kids hated the injections, so they started giving you the pills. But the pills were awful. They made you throw up. And that means the effectiveness was bad. You took the pills and then you vomited a little while later. They were terrible. I mean, I was a kid. I didn't understand that stuff. But you got better pretty quick. Now I would have loved it if my parents knew herbs and I didn't have to go lay in bed a few days to get better, That would have been a much nicer existence, But my parents didn't know anything about using herbs or anything like that, And I remember as a young guy in my 20s in New York, that in the winter, you would get, if you were lucky, you would get sick once or twice during the flu season, which was basically, what did we call the flu season? The cold weather kicked in usually in November. By Thanksgiving it was cold, and it stayed cold until mid-March usually. So in that window is when you would mostly get sick. In a bad flu season, you'd get sick 3 or 4 times, usually twice. It depends what you did. Now, if you washed your hands before you ate and you stayed out of restaurants, you would have and movie theaters and nightclubs and stuff, you'd fare much better. The way germs spread in the restaurants is the servers take food away from the table, which has the saliva from the people that are there that are sick, and it gets on their hands, and if they wear gloves, it gets on their gloves, not their hands. And then they bring you the food, and they transfer the germs to your plate. So I had a doctor explain this to me, and he told me that in the flu season, stay out of the restaurants. Or if you're going to do the restaurants, do takeout, And then I used to go to the supermarket during the flu season when the people were sick, and I'd get the groceries, and I would wipe them down with wet paper towels when I brought them home, because the people are putting their germs all over the groceries, especially the cashiers and stuff. They'd be sitting there wiping their nose, so I wiped the groceries off. I think I was using wipes at one time. But then somebody taught me in the late 90s how to use herbs, and they taught me, echinacea. Oh, I can't remember all the ones I was using then. Colloidal silver I learned about. Garlic. I can't remember all of them. There were several I used then. I got a cold and I started taking these herbs, and I realized I had a cold about 8 in the morning, and by 3 in the afternoon it had dried up, and I said, whoa. Then I was hooked, And then I found out about more herbs, and I rotated them, and they would do a pretty good job, but then after I was already using herbs for a while, I got a bad bronchitis, and I don't know, I didn't get over on it with the herbs, so I used antibiotics. But man, I was sick. I was getting injections. I was sick for 8 weeks. I mean, I was functioning. I was working. I was going out. I was doing things, but I don't think I had any fever. Maybe a low-grade fever, if any. Probably nothing. But I was coughing. It took a long time to get rid of that. That, they tell you, is the hardest thing to get rid of with herbs and alternative medicine. Is the cough. That's, they say, is the hardest. Then I learned about acupuncture. And then I realized that you don't get anywhere with acupuncture. And I went to a lot of acupuncturists to learn that. And then I learned about foot reflexology, and I learned that works. That was a surprise. You could get rid, muscle aches, pains, and all that. They can work on your toes, and it works for the whole body. And you could, they can manipulate your toes, and a headache will go away, for instance, or neck ache, or lower back pain, or sciatica. I mean, it works. Amazing. Would it get rid of a cough? I don't think so. I learned all kinds of stuff, Um, so, yeah, you can go pretty far. Actually, I used to make my own colloidal silver, and I used to just drink a whole glass of it, because it's weak colloidal silver, and then I would make it again. Takes an hour and a half, 2 hours to make it. I'd make a second glass and drink it, and then usually after 2 glasses full, I'd get pretty good. I'd be a lot better, maybe gone, or and I started with rife machines and all different kinds of things. They don't do very much. They used to work well, but the ones they have today are not like the ones that the guy Rife had. So they don't do much. Waste of money, I think, more than anything. They do a little bit, but they're never that effective. And I tried other machines, and ozone, and, ozone is pretty good if you could find a doctor that gives you ozone injections. The way they really do the ozone is they take blood out and they put it in some kind of special jar. I think they take 100 cc's or something like that, and they flood that jar with ozone, the gas. They flood it, and it gets inside the blood, and it kills the germs, and it makes like a natural vaccine for your body. And then they put the blood back in you, and boy, that could really help. And you could take ozone gas, what's called insufflation. You could figure out where that is. That's the back door, and that works rather well too. But you got to use medical grade ozone. And then they have ozone tents, where you're using a cheap $100 or $50 ozone machine, and it's a little tent, and you have a hole for your head, and you make a hole with a knife, or it has a place, and you stick the silicone hose in from the ozone machine, the cheap one, inside the tent, and you got to wrap a towel, because the ozone, you don't want to breathe it or get it in your eyes or anything like that. It'll irritate your sinuses, if your throat and stuff, if you breathe it. So you wrap a towel around there, and you sit in the thing with all the ozone pouring in there, but you got to leave an open window in the room so you don't get too much ozone in your throat. And you should sit right near an open window. So you take your clothes off, or maybe keep your underwear, and you turn on the ozone, and you sit there for about 45 minutes, and it really gets you feeling good. And then you do it a second time in the afternoon, a few hours later, 4, 5, 6 hours later, and usually you get better. And they're cheap, you don't need medical grade ozone to bring it through your body. and it goes in the skin. And that's another way to do it. So I learned all these things, it was interesting. It's interesting. The herbs work, but you got to take a lot of them. You got to take way more than you think, but they do work. You know, they do work. And, I've lived in other countries where you can just go to the drugstore and buy practically anything without a doctor. So I would buy in, injectable antibiotics or pills, and you can get rid of, like if you feel your throat's getting sore, you just. What a lot of people do in other countries is they take like about 6 antibiotics a day the first day. They'll take about 6 of them, maybe 8. And then the second day they'll take a few and they're better. Where the doctors in most countries, they seem to drag it out. They tell you to take 2 or 3 a day, and then you stay sick for a week or 10 days. You got a second follow-up visit. Maybe they change the antibiotics. Maybe you get secondary and you start buying things for your runny nose and your cough and And I had this doctor explain to me that they got the people under medicating themselves. They don't give them the full run. So sometimes he would have you take 4 a day. But it seems to me that they get better if they take it. What I learned, what the people do in these other countries is they'll take 6 a day. And if they're not better the next day, they might take 6 again or 4 or something like that. And then a lot of them will buy a preloaded needle it's a double penicillin, 2 different kinds of penicillin, and they'll just jam that into their hip, and give themselves a shot, and you get pretty much better from that right away too. Usually, the reason they don't use penicillin that much is there's some things it doesn't always work on, but I remember the old tetracycline used to work pretty good, but they started getting strains that it wouldn't work on, so they stopped using it. They have different tiers of antibiotics that they use. And they're less and less common, the higher up you go. Well, that dog out there seems to be a nice dog, but he sure likes his barking. I don't know whose dog he is. He's too far away for this house. I don't know. There used to be 2 little dogs the other way. I haven't heard them in a long time. I guess they died. I used to hear them all the time. I guess they're gone. The dogs are great. The only thing I dread about dogs is they don't live forever, and when they go, oh man, I don't ever want to go through that again. It's so hard. And I had to give dogs away in the past for various reasons when I was poor, and it still haunts me today how broken up they were when I had to give them away. Cats too. I hate it. I hate doing that. I love them, but I get so attached to them. It's hard. It's like I'm at the point now. Well, we got 2 dogs, but boy, I don't know. It's really hard. We've lost birds, from the bird rescue thing my wife runs. We've lost birds several times already. That we seem to be able to take in stride. We don't bond that closely to the birds like a dog or a cat. They don't come into bed with you. Well, they used to. We used to take the birds into bed. Birds are kind of funny. I don't know. I pray for our birds. They're very happy. They're always making noise and talking and chirping. The only time they won't is if it's very cold outside or very hot, but we keep them cool. And if it is hot, we put them in the AC. But that probably won't happen anymore till next year. So they're pretty happy campers. If it's going to get below 40, we bring them inside. We have heat lamps, so if it's below 50, we give them a heat lamp. And they seem to like that. They get near the heat lamp and they just, they perch and they just go to sleep and they keep pretty warm. They enjoy it, actually. Because they're outside, they like outside more. And then when it's cold, we just put them inside and they seem to like that too. They don't really care. They don't mind being inside. I think they like it better outside. Other birds come and visit them to steal food they dropped. And then at night, when our dogs aren't normally running around outside, the cats will come and try to eat some food the birds dropped. But today there was a hedgehog in the yard. Now, I used to get a lot of hedgehogs, but they don't come around anymore with the dogs. The dogs don't put up with them. And I think they're cute, and I think they're harmless. I don't mind them, but the dogs do. So the dogs stood between my wife and the hedgehog, protecting my wife as if it was a wild animal that could hurt you, It's just a hedgehog, They're cute. They got cute little pink feet. They're little round guys with that armor thing around them. And, I guess they come in to eat vegetation. I don't mind them, but the dogs certainly hate them. Chief and Mafia used to corner them and just keep them cornered and not stop barking until I came over. And I guess they thought I would kill it or something, but instead I would just pick them up and carry them away. They'd forget about it. Then the next time they came out, they'd look for him, see if he's still there, and I could bark at him again, When Chief was younger, he was tough. Before we had Chief, we had outside cats. That were neighborhood cats. We just would feed them. And, they got friendly with us. And we wouldn't put them in the house at all. They'd never come in the house. We had Parrot in the house. They'd never come in. But, you could pet them and stuff like that. And they came around and then they couldn't understand why Chief was there. They thought I was crazy bringing a dog into the house because they hated dogs, So one day, Chief, I had his food bowl and a water bowl out on a patio. I'd feed him out there. And the cat, I think, either the cat walked over while Chief was there to drink some of his water or eat his food. I think Chief might have been at the water and came to see what he could find in the food bowl. And Chief just looked at the cat, no barking, no growling, charged the cat full steam ahead. And Chief was built like a muscle man. He was solid and heavy and strong. And he hit that cat full steam, and the two of them went tumbling. And then the cat sprung up and ran away. Didn't want any more of Chief. But Chief was, a little monster. I remember once there was a bunch of cats in the street, like about 8 of them, 6, 8, 10, I don't know, quite a few. And I was walking Chief. He just picks his head up and walks right through the cats with me. No problem. Didn't care. He had attitude. He knew how to do it. He had attitude. So, anyway, guys, this is the reality of where we're at. We're getting to the end of the age, and as I showed you the other day, when you have the end of the age, lots of people are going to die. And you got to make your mind up that you're going to be with Jehovah, and this is a good thing. And that's it. If you're going to cling to, I don't want any change, I want it to stay the same, you got to start examining yourself and asking yourself if you really understand the scriptures. I'm not saying you're not a real believer. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to really understand what's going on. Okay? And, you know, was it a bad thing when he did the flood? I don't think so. But the world's a horrible place now. We've been through the 2,000 years of punishment, and the world's just in a really, really bad shape. And Jehovah's going to fix it, and it's going to be a much better place, and you're going to have a much better life. So much better, you probably don't even know it, and you probably can't understand it. I don't think any of us can, self-included. So, you know, it's going to be really good. You've got to get with that program, and I seem to be getting punished because people don't like that I talk about this stuff. Well, that's where we're at in prophecy. So I'm not going to just talk trash to you. I'm not going to do that. You know, my dogs don't want to play with the hedgehogs. They don't like hedgehogs. They see the hedgehog as a trespasser in their property, and they think it has no right to be here, and they don't want it, and they kill it. That's sad, but that's what they do. They have no remorse when they kill something. They don't care. They don't think about it. Okay, so I hope you got something out of this today. And yes, Russia might go into war with NATO. Russia's desperate. NATO's not so desperate, but Russia is. And NATO will not let Russia attack Romania or Poland or Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania or Norway, and they're not going to. Well, I think Norway is in NATO. I don't remember, but they're not going to let Russia attack any NATO state. Yeah, I did believe they're in NATO. They're not going to let that happen. Trump might not want wars, but Putin's not taking Trump very seriously. So that's something I wouldn't plan on Trump being able to stop. Now, the people in Russia could always give Putin a bullet to the head. The sanctions are crippling Russia, by the way. And Trump keeps putting more and more on, and the economy is getting worse and worse in Russia. So Putin might just be thinking, let me make a move. If it doesn't do good, we'll do peace. If I'm winning, I'll stay with it. If I'm losing, I'll make a peace deal with them. Let's see what happens. Okay, so my Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for all the true believers and their households and their families for your shalom, your peace, your joy, your calm, your rest to be on them and remove the problems from their lives and help them with finances and health and family and neighbors and friends and employers and governments and corporations and all the other obstacles that the demonic countries put on true believers, and help them with all these things, and help them understand the scriptures and have joy and peace and calm and patience. And may the gifts of the Spirit operate through them as well. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I pray, my Heavenly Father, for good sleep for all the true believers, and I bind all you unclean spirits from doing anything to interfere with good night's sleep for all the true believers and their households and families for all time. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And pray for, and you can join in and agree. Please agree, even if it's just a video. Agree. And I ask you, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for me and my wife, for our peace, safety, protection, joy, and healing, and pray for our finances, which seems to be drying up again, that resumes, and pray for better videos, and our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole, and safe and secure, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and please agree. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out. Okay, guys. 2.5 hours. That's better. I didn't run that long. I'm out. Thanks, guys.